How do our cells use energy? What are enzymes and what is ATP and how is this important? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Terrax. To recap, every living thing is made of cells, and these cells do a lot of different chemical reactions through cellular processes. In every chemical reaction, the reactant, which is the before of the reaction, must gain enough energy to pass the activation energy barrier before the reaction can proceed and finish. Usually, this takes a lot of energy in the form of heat since the activation energy barrier is too high. However, special substances known as catalysts can actually lower this barrier, making the reaction happen much quicker. In biology, there are special types of catalysts called enzymes. These enzymes work by binding to one or more substrates in order to make the chemical reaction between them go much faster. The place in the enzyme that the substrate binds to is called the active site, and if the substrate's shape matches the active site's shape, then the enzyme will bind. It's sort of like a key and a lock. However, not always does the enzyme's active site 100% match the substrate. In these cases, the active site can actually change its shape a little bit to bind to the substrate. This enzyme changing the shape of the active site is known as the induced fit hypothesis. So I guess it's more of like a key and a lock, but the lock's shape can change a little bit. So enzymes are cool, but sometimes you don't want a reaction to occur. In this case, a competitive inhibitor can block the active site of the enzyme, blocking the substrate from binding to the enzyme and disabling the chemical reaction. Going back to the activation energy diagram, we now have a chemical reaction whose activation energy barrier is significantly lower due to an enzyme binding with the reactants. However, energy is still needed to overcome the barrier. While heat is a type of energy that can do this, most cells can use a more effective type of energy called ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Not at this point. So next time a friend texts you ATP, ask them, did you mean adenosine triphosphate? LOL. I always do that to everyone. Maybe this is why I don't have friends. Anyways, ATP is a super important molecule in biology. It is a modified RNA nucleotide consisting of a 5-carbon ribose sugar, a nitrogenous base, which is adenine in ATP, and 3 phosphate groups. Now, all these phosphate groups are negatively charged, meaning they cannot wait to separate. This chain of 3 phosphates is like forcing 3 kids who don't like each other to hold hands. Obviously, one of them will want to release their hand. This is similar to how the bond between the second and third phosphate is really unstable. So when ATP is used in a chemical reaction, it splits into ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and a phosphate group. The splitting of the molecule is very favorable and releases a lot of energy that can be used to overcome the activation energy barrier. You might be wondering, how do cells even get ATP? Well, ATP is actually produced inside of the mitochondria using sugar and fat, but that's a story for another video. You might also be wondering, if ATP is a modified RNA nucleotide, are there other forms of energy but with different nitrogenous bases? And the answer is yes. To name an example, GTP, or guanosine triphosphate, exists and is less commonly used inside of the cell, but is still used as energy. So now we know how chemical reactions inside of cells work. An enzyme binds to the substrates, or reactants, which lowers the activation energy. Then, a lot of the times, ATP will be broken up into adenosine diphosphate, so 2 phosphates, plus another phosphate group to provide the energy needed for the reactants to overcome the activation barrier and make products. These reactions happen every millisecond inside of your body, and you're using ATP every time you breathe, move, or even sleep. I like to call ATP the king of molecular biology because it's such a useful form of energy. Well, if this video is helpful, please like and subscribe. And if you want to learn about cellular energy and types of enzymes in detail, check out the advanced video series where I cover biology topics in greater specificity.